Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I am so grateful that you're here. Welcome to the weekly astrology report, the Catalyst weekly astrology report. We're going to be looking at the Gemini full moon that is happening tomorrow, which is the 18th of December, 2021. We're going to look at today's astrology, of course. We're going to look at the weekend. We're going to look at Monday's astrology leading up to the solstice. And I do believe that I'm going to put out a separate report for the solstice and the season in general, just to give a little snapshot. Of course, we've gone over a lot of what the winter is going to bring in general when we looked at the eclipse season, because it's not going to be until way out into April and May that energy starts to wrap itself up. So there's a lot of overlap there. But of course, just like with anything, it's all dynamic. It's all fluid. And every input that we make into the system is going to impact the system to a certain degree. So things that were perhaps missed on the first pass, or maybe understood in a different way, may come through a different set of eyes on the second, third, fourth, or a billion times around. So it's important that we never just assume we know everything and stop learning and stop exploring, because then we stop growing and we stop evolving. And what good is that if that's the whole point of being here? So there will be a report that is going to be very specific to the solstice. If you have any interest in checking out your sign horoscope in relation specifically to this full moon, you can do that by, if you're on YouTube, there's an actual playlist now that will make it very easy to access your particular sign when it comes to the astrology forecast for the week. And then also to, if you're on BitChute, there's no way to aggregate things into a playlist for BitChute on your own channel. So at least not that I have found. So you'll just have to scroll down into the channel in and of itself to find your sign. But that's a bi-weekly thing. So welcome back, everyone. I just need to get that out of my system so we can get into the channeling of the astrology. So I did all my prep, and I still don't feel like I'm particularly ready for this report. But it's a lot of times it's more important to just show up and maintain consistency and dedication, as opposed to the constant procrastination that sometimes is fueled by, an unattainable sense of perfection. So if you have strong Virgo in your chart, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I have very strong Virgo in my chart. It's not my sun, moon, or rising, but it's starseed markings galore, and Saturn in my north node. So I understand in some ways I can't even get around that seeking of perfection, which is about being able to live in simultaneous communion with the light and the shadow. That is the real mastery of Virgo. This is why the Virgos are really quite masterful in general. So we'll go through it, and what ends up happening, as you know, if you're not new to this channel, is as we get into the material, that is often when the real nuggets come through, or the channeling. So it's just about tapping into the flow, isn't it? So how is everyone doing? I just want to check in and see what's going on. Oh, more bots. That's so awesome. In some ways, I guess that's a good thing that I'm now getting this particular kind of bot action in my stream, and they're probably just tracking what I'm doing now. So that's great. That must mean that I'm making an impact somewhere. So we're going to be talking about the weekend, the full moon, of course, in Gemini, and I want to acknowledge and validate for people, if you're really just feeling, across the spectrum, but in a general sense, like really starting to feel the weight, right? It's good. It's good that we're feeling the weight, and it's good that it's being brought right to our awareness in a mental and cognitive way, because it's going to be that weight that becomes so unbearable that we choose to release it when the moon becomes very full. And the placement of the sun at this full moon at the center of the galaxy, or in conjunction, right? So it's the sun, and then between us on Earth and the galactic center, the center of the Milky Way galaxy. So through the sun, there's likely to be a nice big blast of galactic codes or information. And then there's still the potential for more flaring. There was an M-class solar flare that was released last night into this morning. It did kind of blip things a little bit, but the Schumann is still, for the most part, not very loud, and is making small amplifications here and there, and certainly the quality and the pitch is variable as it usually is. But in terms of the amplitude, I mean, it's certainly making movement, right? It is certainly going up in amplitude, and it's variable, but it's nothing like we've seen in the past, especially with all of this potential solar flare activity. We're on watch. It hasn't really happened, although there's a lot of sunspots that are coming into view now. So activity, but if you are looking at the graphs for the magnetosphere, it's not very dense, and there's not a lot of corresponding pressure to that density. So what's interesting is that there's starting to be a lift, but part of that lift, at least in my personal experience and what I'm feeling in terms of the collective energetic structure, is that the lift is not coming without the corresponding pushback. And it's going to be the pushback that we all choose to release from our very thoughts and our minds and our the antenna that allows us to plug into the field of reality, right? The third house in Gemini is learning and language and the movement in our immediate environment. But really, it's the function of the nervous system and how it allows for us to interface with this objective reality that we know in the second house, for instance, and start to make sense of it, right? This is what Gemini in the third house. So something along the lines of, and I've talked about this endlessly, right? If you go into the astrology horoscope forecasts, I mean, this is for every sign, just in a different area of life, that this is an unbearable pressure that we can allow ourselves to be released from. And it will come through some measure of an enduring knowing and something that is beyond each of us individually that we can tap into. So it's actually very hopeful, but we won't be motivated, I don't think, to really let go of that which is an unbearable pressure without actually feeling it. And so depending on what your sign is, right, what your rising sign is, you might be feeling this in different areas of your life, maybe different areas of your body, and to let it flow through you. I mean, I think that's we have a lot of mutable energy with Neptune and Pisces, the Sun and Mars now in Sagittarius, and of course with the Moon in Gemini. The only piece missing right now is Virgo, which we will get a Moon in Virgo on the next weekend, Christmas, if you celebrate Christmas, the Christmas holiday, Christmas Eve into Christmas Day is some gnarly ass astrology too. So we will take some time to talk about that now, because I don't know if necessarily I will get a chance to talk about it by the time next Friday rolls around, because we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. So I hope everyone is doing well and taking good care of themselves. The body hurts, and yes, a release is in need. Yeah, it's so overwhelming. I'm definitely feeling it in my heart quite a bit, which makes sense because my fifth house cusp is like mid-Gemini. So the moon is now making the transition out of my fourth, which is very deep, very internalized, very sensitive to everything in terms of where my root system is, and now moving into the fifth house. And this transition really does mark, just in general, right, the move from a very experiential, and with Taurus, a certainly very objective and material experience of being into a release into consciousness, right? Because that's where Gemini really shines, is that first realization that you are, in fact, separate from the world around you. And it's that separation that is really not separation that we start to become conscious of ourselves and eventually return back, right? That is the mutability of Pisces. And the body hurts. Yeah, the body hurts. The heart is opening. There's a lot of outpouring, at least for me personally, in that area. And the heart really does shine and pump the blood the most in the 5th house. This is where all of that deep energy of the 4th house, or even in the sense of Taurus to Gemini, it's very stable and fixed and static in some ways, and then is starting to be released into at least mutability, right? So it just really depends on where you're finding these things in your chart that give you an indication of what areas of your life that it might be popping up in. So the full moon, man, I can't wait, honestly. I'm just like looking forward to it like it's a pimple that is about to pop. And then the moon actually comes into Cancer, speaking of the 4th house. And this is going to be a really important time because the full moon happens right at the end of Saturday, 11:30 p.m. Eastern time in the United States. So late in the evening, very early in the morning that the moon is in its exact fullness. And then comes into a trine with Jupiter, which is, we are in the process of the metamorphosis right now, in some ways. And Jupiter is keeping us kind of on track if we are, maybe not so much on track, but is giving us all of the resources we need to execute whatever metamorphosis is happening for all of us. But the 19th after the full moon is a pretty big day too. It's just the hits keep on coming. I think the only real day that we'll have like a break, and if you can even call it a break, is the 23rd when the moon is in Leo, but it's not making a ton of connections necessarily at that point. So, and then we go right into Christmas Eve and Saturn square Uranus. This is man, just be ready. That's all I can say. And I'm not saying you should be afraid of anything. Absolutely not. The fear is the mind killer, right? We don't want to feed it, but danger is very real, and tension is very real, and conflict and challenge is very real. And how else do we grow? And Saturn and Uranus are natural enemies. They are foes. They are always at it, because Saturn is, in fact, the wheel of karma, time, space, the boundary of material reality, and the engine of nature. And Uranus is the splitting of the atom, right? It is the power that is released as a result of the incredibly cohesive, concrete action that Capricorn represents. So, of course, they're always going to be at it. And so for those two to square off, to come into a 90-degree angle of fixed energy of Saturn in Aquarius and Uranus in Taurus is going to be crumpling, to say the least. Certainly very activating and maybe very drastically awakening as well, when the trickster when the trickster of Aquarius meets Saturn, is just like, oh, how do you transcend the very nature of reality? I think we're going to learn that. I think we're going to really learn that, and we're going to learn how to wake up out of our sleep in that moment, right? And this is not like the first time that these two have come into a square, but it is certainly very interestingly placed and timed. But what else do we have? Chiron stations direct on Sunday. Venus station retrogrades on the same day. Mercury is going to square Chiron before or after it moves direct, correct? It's hard to say. I have the notes. No, it is before it moves direct. It's right when it's still retrograde. And then it's going to have a trine to Uranus. So there's so much to talk about. So we'll start at the beginning and just start to weave this narrative together, so that we have some idea of the shit show that we may be facing coming up, right? I'm hungry. Do you mean you're literally hungry? Because I was starving. I've been starving, like not starving to death. That's so dramatic. It's 5th house. It's very dramatic. I have been very hungry. Like I've been eating a lot, and really kind of like trying to, it feels like I can't eat enough, if that makes sense. And maybe that's what you also are talking about as well. I'd be curious to know if that's if that's the case. So, all right, guys, so I'm just going to bring up the chart and let's get into it so that we are not just like, losing valuable time here. All right, friends. So again, like I said, I hope you're doing well. If you want to listen to your individual signs horoscope for this full moon, you can do so, like I said, through the playlist on YouTube. I tried to link it at the video from yesterday, and you can't link a playlist as far as I can tell. You can only link individual videos. So, but the playlist makes it very easy. So you can do that. And there'll be another one coming out for the new moon, leading up to the new moon, and the week after, which will be after the new year, or the calendar new year. It'll be the 2nd of January, 2022, if you can believe that we're in 2022. So close, so close. All right, guys. So let's move this over here, and there we go. All right. Man, I miss my hair. I miss it. I knew it needed to get cut off, but I definitely miss it. It'll come back. That's the thing about hair. It grows back. So here's our chart for today, my friends. We are grocery shopping before breakfast is a rookie mistake. Oh, yes, it is. But you have been hungrier lately. Same, I can't satisfy my appetite. I think we're bulking up for something. It really says to me that it's like a normal winter type of thing, but also there are people that aren't in places where it's getting cold. So I am grocery shopping before any meal is a rookie mistake. Man, and sometimes you just have to do it because that's just the way it is. But it's very funny. All right, here we go. So today our moon is in Gemini, and we're gonna walk through this, okay? Or maybe speed walk through it, or jog through it. We'll see what happens, because I've talked a lot about these aspects pretty endlessly, it feels like. So our moon is in Gemini, and things that's going to happen today is the fact that the moon is then going to be in a trine to Saturn. So Saturn's kind of a big can tell, because it is, let me find the notes here. Saturn is a huge anchor right now, but it also is like what is our density as well, right? I mean, it's such a fine line right now that I'm so grateful for a Gemini full moon, because it's really it's really the main thing right now that we can be masters of, is this Gemini realm and the duality of everything, and not to get caught up in the dual nature of itself, of good versus evil, but realize that even that relationship in itself is what creates something new, is the alchemical transmutation. And I'm not supporting the fact to think that it's inevitable to have evil in the world, because, conceptualizing it, intellectualizing it, and then experiencing it are different things entirely. And I don't want people to experience anything like that. But what I'm saying is the ability to tap into this Gemini energy, because the North Node is still here. Black Moon Lilith actually is in Gemini and is making some very interesting connections. We're going to talk about that too. Black Moon Lilith in Gemini right now, because as you can see, as of this afternoon, so early, in midday, she's actually going to be in conjunction with where she was at the eclipse, right? Because Lilith, just like the nodal axis of the moon, has this varying back and forth, because there's a wobble in the rotational, around the axis. And so the position of the nodes and Lilith, which are not objects at all, they're literally just positions in space. They represent things very important, just like, we have positions in space within us where there is a frequency in which we create, but they have a wobble, right? And so Lilith is now coming back. She was retrograde at the eclipse, and now moving in a direct motion is going to cross that same place. It was in direct opposition to the eclipse. So areas that the solar eclipse and Lilith fell into, because you're going to get another kind of like, primal urge in some ways around these issues that were there to begin with, except it was way deeper, more internalized, perhaps kind of hiding in the shadows. Well, now she is certainly making herself known, because that is what Lilith does, and demands to be seen and heard. So you're going to see it come back up. Okay, so anyway, we'll get back into the moon transits. There'll be time for those connections in a little bit. So I think the big one, not only a sextile to Chiron, still retrograde by, just for like 2 more days, right? So Chiron is stationing and slowing down. Venus is stationing and slowing down. So again, you have this kind of stasis point between these two archetypal figures that are ready to shift gears. One going internalized, and the other starting to be, expressed outwardly, or certainly going to be reflected back to us in our outer world when Chiron stations direct. And I think that that's going to be a pretty revealing time, just as much as the moon is. So when the moon comes into a sextile with Chiron, as we see, well, guess what? The moon is in conjunction with Aldebaran, right? We've talked about the fixed stars, Aldebaran and Ain and Alcyon and even Algol. Yeah, but specifically all of these these star names that begin with A is really kind of sitting with me. And so Aldebaran, though, is in relation to Archangel, that's a double A. Michael, right? The warrior, the heavenly warrior, and the flaming sword. And it's really about being able to penetrate through all of the illusion, all of the distraction, everything to get to the bullseye. And Archangel Michael is only going to truly strike when, like, right to the heart of the issue, whatever it is, or the enemy, or whatever Michael is meant to address. And it is only in very, very specific circumstances where that, there is no waste of energy here. And that is where the moon is. So in a sextile to Chiron, just days before it goes direct, we have a real opportunity here, a real opportunity, as all sextiles are. They are such an opportunity to invest and to really try to reconcile, which had led us to some disappointment or any number of really challenging feelings or experiences. This is a moment where we can just get right to the heart of something, cut through all the bullshit, and know that we have all of the means to get right to the center point of the issue. And that is really going to allow us, I think, again, to resolve or certainly see through a lot of the fog or the distractions, right? There's so many distractions pulling us off our central focus on our own being and how it is the beginning of everything. And if we don't acknowledge that, and we don't focus our attention on the entire picture of our potential and where we could be, then we keep going back around to this, we keep being brought back to the same thing, the same identity, right? A wounded healer, victim, savior, whatever, to feel guilty about who we are. So if we are able to cut through all the noise, right, and have a very, and this is internally, because we're talking about the moon, this is a feeling. So these things are meant to be invested in each other. Specifically, I feel like with Aldebaran and having Archangel Michael be kind of the patron of this star, which is the other eye of the bull. Ayin is the left eye. Omicron. And then, but Aldebaran is the right eye. So these in themselves are meant to balance things out between integrity and virtue, and maybe just what happens when you have nothing but knowledge and pure gnosis. You have to act on it in some way. So Aldebaran, representing that, is getting right to the point, and being able to cut through all the bullshit. And when we can do that from a intuitive place, from a feeling place, in our own subconscious even, this is really going to be a very strong, I think, investment into being able to, again, focus on who we actually are and focus our attention on letting that naturally grow, as opposed to letting the superimposed holographic matrix determine who we are. And that can come from a lot of different places. And again, where Chiron is in your chart is going to tell you right now what area of your life you're going to be experiencing this in. So that happens, already. This is already happening, or just happened this morning. So as we move forward with today, like I said, then the moon comes into that trine with Saturn, right? And this air trine. And Saturn is, pretty stern right now, and the inspiration you really need at the beginning of like a new cycle is going to come from within you, and not even just within you, but you have to tap into something more than just yourself in order to acquire this inspiration wherever it's coming from. And it really, again, depends on which Aquarian social organism you find yourself linked up with that's going to make a difference here. If you in fact are linked up to the Matrix, for instance, then you're just going to be inspired with whatever is downloaded through where you're jacked in, right? Right into your limbic system in the back of you, right? Your older parts of your brain that you don't even realize are there and operating. But if you are invested in and already part of a reality that is based on love and trust and integrity and compassion and, you know, all of the highest aspects of the Aquarian collective, then it's plugging into that's going to allow for the most powerful inspiration. So either way you look at it, it's happening. And Saturn is kind of just, again, there's this density with Saturn, but in some ways it's kind of keeping us in place and, like, you know, anchoring us into the reality that we're in, and we'll make it. And this is why the square with Saturn, the square with Uranus is going to be really so difficult, because, but also too, wow, how empowering this could possibly be, and how reinforcing of our own stability and our own authority when there is massive upheaval in our material reality. It's because, yeah, that's going to change and go. That's the thing about Taurus, the second house, and material reality. It's subject to the processes of what? Scorpio, death and rebirth. It's opposition. So even with the change that's coming and will be really like, and just activated so much by what Saturn represents, I think that this is going to be either totally detrimental and not without a learning opportunity, but also it'll really, like, it'll almost solidify things even more for people that have allowed themselves to plug into the highest version of Aquarius. So now that the moon is in this moment, again, when we can feel the opportunity for engaging in new pioneering potential, right, within our own subconscious, within our own feelings, right? This is important because this is already setting the tone for the full moon. Opportunities for experience, and we see the open land in front of us. Again, the trine to Saturn is something that allows us to simultaneously be strongly positioned and solidified in one place, but allowing our subconscious and our to actually go out and explore and accept and to go out fearlessly in some ways, or at least with curiosity, right? Being a pioneer has both of those things attached to it, curiosity and courage. And we do need that right now. And if we can align, you know, and really just take advantage of this trine here, again, it has a lot to do with what version of Saturn you are connected with, because it's the co-ruler of Aquarius. So there's no doubt that it's incredibly powerful here too. So it really depends on which version of Saturn you're with. And if you are, I would say, plugged into the Saturn that is plugged into the false matrix, whatever it is, the one that's crumbling or the false one that's being overlaid right now, you will, I think, just easily be led into a totally new place. Thinking that you're going somewhere new, right? This is just kind of like a shepherding of your own subconscious in some ways. Whoa, that's intense. I never really thought about it that way until I started channeling this. So, now the moon, sorry, I'm going to get off that because that was just a little bit too much, too heavy. Sometimes it's just too much. Now, at the very end of today, as we're going to see now, we just talked about Black Moon Lilith is going to be meeting the location she was at the solar eclipse, which was directly opposite of it, Sun in Sagittarius, and so she directly opposite in Gemini. So we're going to find that throughout the day, you can see the moon here. So if we go a couple hours, make sure you can see this. Hold on one second. If we go a number of hours into the evening today, we're going to, there we go. We're going to see that the moon and Black Moon Lilith do meet each other at 14 to 15 degrees of Gemini. And this really does stress how absolutely important it is that we're actually exchanging knowledge to verify what we're subjectively experiencing in our mind. This is going to, again, and Black Moon Lilith, right? She demands to be heard, primal urge coming out. I mean, if you get trapped in the abyss of what this represents, then yeah, you become the shadow, right? But if you acknowledge that it's there, you go into this space, and then you bring the power from it back into a heart-centered type of experience, then it's so, so powerful. I mean, this is where, the rubber meets the road with a lot of like the Draco stuff, for instance, right? If you can go into the depth of the shadow and come back out as with the power that you have gathered. You remember if you've seen the Doctor Strange movies, hold on one second, guys, I have to plug this in. I keep forgetting to do this. If you've seen the Doctor Strange movies, the Avengers, you remember that the Ancient One, it comes out at the very end that she's been drawing her power from, some dark extra-dimensional being, and it was a big deal in some ways. But this can really showcase this quite a bit. So if you are able to go into the abyss and not go completely insane, then you have an incredible amount of power that allows you to really advocate for yourself and your own preservation. It's, like I said, very primal, which means it's connected to the prime reality, not the overlay. So but it's really important that we are talking to each other, exchanging knowledge, and even if it's not a direct communication with self, because we're talking about the moon and then Black Moon Lilith, which in some ways is her opposition, we're having a conversation between these two parts of ourselves and actually like working it out. This is really, really important. I can't stress how important this lead up to the full moon really is, because we really do need to put some things through through our own examination and our own our own analytical system. But the beginning of that is to share and exchange information. And we might be doing that within ourselves. We may be doing that as a result of how we're feeling and expressing our feelings to other people and having that exchange happen. Maybe we're having experiences and we really do need actually to talk to other people, which is a big part of why I come on here and do this every day, so that there is, some measure of like, hey, maybe other people are feeling this way and I can give you the language to maybe understand it a little better. But this, by the end of today, I think is going to be a big part of the reveal eventually for the full moon, because we really need to be able to hear what is happening down underneath, right? Because the shadow and the light are inseparable from each other, right? If there is no matter in order to cast a shadow, then it's just light. And I'm not suggesting that we should do that or aspire to that or not aspire to that. But what I do know is that we live in this universe, in this physical form right now. And part of our ascension into higher densities is to realize the creative potential of these two aspects, that they are one and the same. And it has something to do with the material reality being part of that. But anyway, the moon meeting Lilith by the end of today is is going to give us an opportunity to really work within our own mind and our own feelings, work out, the two sides of ourselves. And in fact, it'll be so powerful, I feel like, with Lilith involved that we'll almost have no choice. And when I say have no choice, it's just going to be such a powerful eruption or a powerful, movement of energy that we will be so drawn in whatever way to address this. And so maybe it'll be in dream time. It really depends on where you are in the world in terms of when this really comes into its relationship, this conjunction. So when we move to the day of the full moon, which we'll look on this chart here, which is going to be much later in the day. So we'll go through the transits. As you can see here, I mean, it's pretty much towards the very end of Saturday. So there's the full moon right here. So we'll go back and look at the transits because there's just so much more leading up to this experience. So we come into Saturday, and the first real transit to look at with the moon is that it has a square to Neptune. Now, if you remember how Mercury and the Sun and soon to be Mars all had that square to Neptune in Pisces, really challenging our ability to stay focused in some ways on acting out where we know we're going, right? Put on all of the hat and the glasses and the mask of what it is we are attempting to invoke or evoke, I suppose, and the completely dissolving power of Neptune in Pisces. Well, this is still a square, but it is on the other end now in Gemini, and there's something very tumultuous about this connection here that needs to be addressed, because we're going to start feeling I think we really start feeling the back and forth, and we're going to really be feeling it anyway, but really be feeling the back and forth between the light and the dark, right? Like it's just going to become I feel like it's just going to become so exhausting to constantly have to maintain the back and forth, and with Gemini especially. So it'll be very tumultuous. And again, it'll be another opportunity to really test ourselves in terms of our almost naive approach to where this is all going. And I'm not suggesting either that we should or shouldn't be naive, trust the plan, don't trust the plan. That's up to you. But Neptune makes sure that there is nothing but the one source of all that we are connecting into, and will dissolve everything it touches, including even the moon in Gemini, which I think is very interesting because with all of the other fire that was squaring Pisces, it's pretty easy to, symbolize that as the water putting out the fire in some ways, or at least creating a lot of steam. But now you're talking about mutable air, right? The ether, and then you're also talking about the moon too, which is very comfortable in Pisces. So I think this will be a lot... it'll be a lot less obvious where the tension is, perhaps, and maybe it's less about trying to. It feels to me that we're going to have a lot of inner battle. That's just really what it feels like. A lot of inner battle about where this is all going and our ability to trust the source, whatever that is for us. And if we don't have any way of identifying what that is, I think that can be even more of a nebulous and confusing place. But let's just say, for the sake of argument here, that we at least recognize that there is a source of all that is represented by Pisces in the 12th house, and everybody's got their own relationship to it, but it is the field, right? It is the vibratory field that then impacts the geometric shape of our reality. It impacts the flow of light as well. So like I said, for argument's sake, we all have some way of identifying what this is. It's just the inner battle is just really going to start reaching some measure of intensity here. And the square is going to bring that out in us. Like, what are we doing? Like, it's up and down, back and forth. And it's going to be very tumultuous, I think, in this moment. And so when the moon moves past this point, I mean, it's going to have a quincunx to Venus and Pluto, right? We're still reeling from that. And it's also going to, Venus and Pluto are going to conjunct again on Christmas Day on the 25th. So we're not getting too much of a break before that energy starts to grow and intensify again. And this time Venus will be retrograde. So it'll be much more of an internalized experience and feeling it on, within our own realm of value and meaning. But right away, so we already are feeling, I think, the battle, the inner battle. And now the moon comes and makes so Venus is already stationed at this point, according to this chart, and the moon comes into that quincunx and then comes into the quincunx with Venus right after, and so she's probably slowed down now to the point where she's stopped, and it won't be until the next day where I think she really starts to move in her retrograde. But either way, what we're looking at here is these two moments of adjustment with something very powerful that's been happening and something incredibly powerful that just happened. And the adjustment is going to come from our ability to really essentialize, and not only essentialize our own existence and to have it revealed, to us within ourselves, right? So that when we are faced with the very raw, transformative, metamorphic power of Pluto, that it doesn't really faze us, because we have it has been revealed to us that there is an essential rhythm of existence that is even beyond the transformation. The transformation is the rhythm, right? And at first, those things aren't going to seem to fit together, but it really won't take much for the adept, I think, to make that adjustment in that moment to transmute this energy. And it's the same thing when the moon comes into the same relationship with Venus right after, except now it's going to be more of, Venus is representing the value and the meaning and the worth of our upreaching, right? Of getting to the top of the mountain, and not just as an individual, but a path that has been laid before over and over and over. And Pluto hasn't quite gotten here yet. He has, but it's going to be so much more destructive when Pluto really does pass over this point soon. And so this is where Venus is right now, about to station retrograde. We're so close. We're like getting up the mountain, and it's this path that has been trod so many times before, and it is about to be washed out by a landslide. But it's very focused on the upreaching itself, the actual concrete action that needs to take place in order to reach this pinnacle point. And even with Pluto and Venus coming together in that conjunction last weekend, and really challenging that, and that was a powerful hit, and really challenging our ability to keep doing this. The moon in the quincunx, just like with Pluto, it's the same moment of like, we have to adjust ourselves in the face of these two aspects that don't fit. Because on the one hand, we are following the pilgrimage trail up the mountain, and we're feeling a lot of personal value, and we're feeling how important it is in terms of meaning and our resources and all the things that Venus represents. But the moon is like, it's time for us to go into unfamiliar territory. Like, we're going to feel the need to emerge out of our safe zone and go back into the fray, right? Instead of the upreaching into like the top of the pyramid or whatever, however you want to look at it. And those things are going to seem like they don't fit together either. Again, it's all part of the buildup to this full moon, because these two adjustment points are going to be very essential in terms of how we then address the opposition to the sun, the full moon. Like, what is it that we are meant to let go of that is holding us back? And holding us back from what, right? That's the other thing too. Are we being held back from actually reaching across the aisle in some ways and shaking hands with our shadow and whatever that represents to us, right? The other side of Gemini. I think that that's a question we should really ask ourselves. And that doesn't have to be a literal person, but in relation, I mean, Venus does represent relationships to a lot of extent, and the balance of it and the asceticism of it and how it makes us feel. So that could be part of it too, like the real mending of relationships. But at the same time, what we may feel like is within us, that we have to actually start bridging the gap again in terms of ideas and concepts and communication, all of these things. And it's going to really put into, challenge us to adjust ourselves. And all this meaning has been wrapped up into all of us getting to this pinnacle point. And that's about to be destroyed anyway. So, and we talked about the full moon endlessly. But just to go over it again, I guess, is the fact that the moon will be opposite the sun. The sun will be in conjunction with the center of the galaxy. There are enduring and very beautiful aspects that are still being used in terms of cultural values that, we don't want to get rid of everything. And it's going to be something so galactic and so big and cosmic that we may not even quite understand exactly what it means. But what we will know and see and feel is what is definitely holding us back from it. And that is going to be a big part of the full moon. So, and then the other aspect that is exact on Saturday is the fact that Mercury in Capricorn comes into a square with Chiron, which is still in its retrograde. So, and is soon to station direct. But this is, again, we've been starting to think very seriously, I think, on what kind of concrete action are we supposed to be taking? How is it that we are able to be in flow with the unfolding of the material reality that and institutions, right? And an entire society that we want to be a part of. And Mercury is, again, how our nervous system functions. And so this square to Chiron, we may find ourselves in attunement to some sort of larger whole and universal rhythm. And no matter which one you're in tune with, it's going to cause some measure of disturbance again with Chiron. So it's either going to be so disturbing that we decide to get out from under this wounded healer identity because we are allowing our minds and our nervous system to be tuned to the right frequency band of nature and of the organic process, or we are in tune with the old guard that is falling away, which can be really scary and reinforce all of these Chiron wounds, or we can be in tune with the false overlay of this that is really meant to bring us into a state of, well, the Borg, basically. Eventually, that's what it gets to. But it's still in the action, the concrete action, and the unfoldment of the material reality through everybody's contribution still is going to make it, even if it's false and holographic, it's still real to us, just like in the Matrix movies. We don't know any different. Everything is so real because you're getting direct signals inputted to your brain. What signals are you allowing to input into your brain? It's going to have a big impact on how you relate to this Chiron wound. And either way you look at it, it's going to be tense. Like, it's not going to be an easy time. But it's going to be so important because Mercury rules this full moon. So there's so much going on that is leading us to really consider where our minds are focused, what signals are we picking up, where are we picking them up from, and what is it in our cultural values and our belief systems and the big picture ultimately that is illuminating for us what is holding us back, each of us, in our own subconscious, in our own feelings, and our own ways of adapting to reality. There's something very heavy that has to be released within each of us, or in our feelings or our subconscious. So when we move to the 19th, which is Sunday, of course, we are going to have the moon move into Cancer. So very important, because the solstice is going to have a Cancer moon opposite Pluto and Venus. So again, there's just going to be another test now. We have the full moon, we get this full illumination. We're like, oh, I feel and see now what is culminated from this eclipse point, even though the full experience of the growth of the solar eclipse is not going to be really seen in its entirety for a while, but this full moon is going to show us something in the immediate time that we need to see and need to address. And having the moon in Cancer opposite of Pluto and Venus in Capricorn is going to be our first real, like, okay, now you saw what needs to go. Now you have to start bringing, you've made a decision, and you're going to start, especially at the second half of Cancer, where the moon will be in opposition to Venus and Pluto. You're going to start consolidating your resources. And if you've been following this channel, then you know that the transmission for yesterday, the intuitive reading, really ended with the Chariot, or the Cancer card in the tarot. So, all of this really is to help us make a decision and to find our strength and our inner power ultimately. And there are things that have been collectively holding us back. There are things that need to be purged collectively and one of the primary steps that is needed, I think, is to have a really sincere and very illuminating look at what is holding on mind and ideas and information. Gemini is about the information and the raw data that we receive and that we put out. So when we get to the 19th, the moon first the moon is going to then trine Jupiter. Here's another really important moment, because it's right after the full moon that this happens. So of course, Jupiter, being our advocate, is like, hey, you're going through this metamorphosis like as we speak. Like, this is the butterfly emerging from the chrysalis. It is the process of the revealing, in some ways, of the metamorphosis process. But what it also is first, let me open these notes, is our advocate. So again, like, really supporting us, giving us the resources, but not necessarily doing anything about it. Just being like, hey, I'll give you everything you need, but you have to actually execute all of this, of course. So, okay, guys. Where are you? There we go. My Lord. Too many windows. So before that happens, though, or before the moon moves into Cancer, I'm so sorry. Okay. There is this trine to Jupiter, and there's a really remarkable moment here. First thing on the 19th, right after the moon, full moon, like right on the morning, late that night, or very early morning, this is a very unique opportunity. It's, if we can see all of these experiences as something that we can actually weave together into something, right? Creative exuberance, right? The human soul responding to basic life experiences with joy and optimism and excitement, and seeing the two, being able to weave the two aspects together into a new song. This was very much supported by Jupiter right now as a larger piece of a metamorphosis process. We have to have some willingness to sing a song, basically. Are we going to be like a mockingbird and take these experiences and weave them together into a new song? I hope so. And Jupiter, like I said, is such a huge advocate for anything that we do that's in accordance to, his will, basically. But his will is truly to defend the upper realms. Not to say that Jupiter or Zeus as a being, he's certainly characterized as not really being interested in what the humans do unless he's attracted to them and fathers children through them. Then he's very interested, in his progeny and in his lineage. But other than that, he could give a fuck. Unless he's pissed. If he's pissed, then he gets involved too. So, but this is an advocate, right? It gives you what you need. And this is going to give us what we need if we are able, I would say, in some sort of personalized or emotional way to find creation in response to these experiences, rather than finding ourselves like just being like a parrot, right? And just literally mocking things or imitating things and not really coming into full metamorphosis. So from there, the moon moves into Cancer, and its first real relationship is with, I would say its first real relationship is, besides Venus station retrograde, Chiron stations direct, and then comes into a quincunx with Mars that's in Sagittarius right now. And we've talked about Mars. This is a moment of wisdom for Mars, though, when it had been very activated up to this point to really start going into battle. And one thing I brought up too is that Mars, especially in that 3rd degree of Sagittarius, you may have found got very conquest-y when it came to like maybe sexual experiences, because that does represent in real time, in real life, the catalyzing or alchemical impact of that type of union. It is very powerful and potent, and Mars, being the co-ruler of Scorpio, can get very hyper-focused and very, like I said, kind of going on the prowl, if you want to call it that, but just really being very strongly led or driven to have that type of relationship in that moment or experience, because it ritualizes what otherwise is a conflicting set of principles, right, is the union through that act. And so you may have found that is the case as well, but then comes into this position here on Sunday, the 19th of, very wise. It's like the wise old owl. So already there is a sense of being able to see past what normally you don't see, right? The eyes that can see at night, because the owl is nocturnal and the owl is a predator, right? Sharp vision in a place where you're not supposed to have any vision because there's no light. And so they are eyes that are trained to see in the darkness. And Mars being very comfortable being in the darkness in Scorpio, this is a moment where Mars can be a very in tune type of warrior. Now it's going to have a quincunx with the moon at the 5th degree of Cancer, which is one of the most difficult degrees that I think is in the entire zodiac, because 5 degrees of Cancer is when your individual desires, not even desires, just your individual nature and your individual will, it pits itself against the power of the collective will, which is what is really holding the individual in the 4th house or Cancer. And it's tragic, right? It's like an automobile gets stuck on a set of train tracks and it just gets destroyed. So you come out of it, right? You might get out of the car, but the train comes by and just destroys everything. So you can see how there may be a very destructive, inner emotional type of experience that could be tragic, but certainly is going to be very destructive. And the quincunx with Mars is that Mars is going to want to do something about it, maybe, but also, too, that Mars is in a position of, like, I can see the whole thing of why that happened, right? Maybe getting ready to act on it after the debris is cleared away. I'm not exactly sure. Again, it depends on so many different factors, but we will have to adjust ourselves in this moment, too. And we don't want to not act either. But there's something about Mars in this position of Sagittarius that's going to be able to see the undertones of this situation, but it's not going to be easy while we are living in the feels of that situation with a moon in Cancer. So just be this is Sunday morning, as the moon starts to move through Cancer. So, and Mars is kind of the charioteer in the chariot. So the fact that these two are in this connection that is very in conjunct speaks volumes to me in terms of what to expect. It's just going to be very challenging, but also too very motivating in some ways. Remember, Cancer is cardinal energy. So we're really going to want to move in terms of our feelings, and Mars is really just gathering his momentum and power. So maybe to realize that there may be some deep, dark, uncomfortable feels, but the adjustment in the moment is maybe to not get too dark about it, but just realize that there is something there that eventually we'll be acting on, but not in the moment. Also, too, we might not find ourselves leaping out of the car in time, because Mars is kind of in the macabre, right? Is very deeply in this deep, dark type of position, and it's just you know what, none of it actually matters because I can see the whole big dark picture. I hope that's not the case. So like I said, it could go a number of different ways. It will be definitely it'll certainly be something, that's for sure. And like I said, the 5 degrees of Cancer is a pretty tragic and destructive moment here, because you're starting to deal with what it means to belong somewhere and to belong to as part of a family or some sort of really tight-knit, close group that is held together with emotional bonds and loyalty and faithfulness. And sometimes when, Gemini is very much about our individual consciousness. So when we make a decision, we still are wrestling with those two aspects of ourselves. And eventually you can't uproot your own roots once they're put down. So maybe that has something to do with it as well. But as we go through Sunday, the other things that are going to happen is that the sun is going to be in a sextile to Jupiter, which is actually, again, we're going to have to step into a role of some social accountability on some level. And if we can do that and attend to our everyday tasks and benefit our own constitution, right? You go out and mow your lawn, or shovel your snow, or chop your firewood, or do whatever it is you need to do that is every day that ensures your social worth and benefits your constitution. Again, we can apply this and invest this. And remember, Jupiter rules Sagittarius. There's a very strong connection right here with this sun sextile Jupiter on Sunday, that if we attend to our everyday tasks, if we see the overall value and worth and meaning behind us being individuals within that process, I feel like that, again, Jupiter is really going to apply all of this advocacy and resources and expansion, again, as a result of the actual metamorphosis process itself. We have to find our voice and our reason for, expressing ourselves through attending to the everyday tasks that have that allow us as individuals to build a society. And those two things with Jupiter and Aquarius, they're going to be very much supporting and influencing each other at this sun sextile, when in fact there is a lot of other really challenging energy floating around. Because right from there, then the moon comes into a square with Chiron, that is supposedly stationed to go, there it is right there, is now stationed direct, and then the moon in Cancer comes into a square with it, and is about to actually be in a T-square with Mercury as well. That Chiron will be the T-square, because the moon in Cancer is this position is very naive and but also very pure, reaching out to understand something, right, in a way that is very childlike and innocent, but also too it's pure. It's a purity and understanding, but at the same time, it's almost naive. It's just like trying to stick your hand into the pond to catch the fish and be like, oh, why is it so elusive, right? That's like a little kid figuring that out for the first time. So the square to Chiron, now it's direct. Now it's going to be direct, and now it's going to be a little bit more difficult, I think, to keep our attention when we keep grabbing for it, keep grasping for this thing that represents who we are and the potential of what we could become. And now we're going to start seeing it out in front of us. You know, the Chiron wounds are going to start being actively represented back to us and reflected back to us in the outer world. And other people are going to be really reinforcing their Chiron wounds. And so if we get easily deterred by this square, it's going to be so difficult to keep our attention on the very essence of who we could be and the potency of all of our potential when things are going to be pulling us off track constantly through shame and guilt and identities that have nothing to do with, the very nature of who we are, our DNA, right? This is the source code within each of us. And so, of course, when the moon comes into a opposition with Mercury, but, on the 20th, and very early in the morning on the 20th, it's going to be in a T-square with the same element of Chiron and, 11 degrees of Capricorn and 11 degrees of Cancer. We are really thinking very, like I said, strategically and very seriously about how to put our meaning into concrete action and, put our minds towards this, this group goal or this integration of the group and really capitalizing on it. But there's going to be something here with the moon in, let's open up here 1 second. There's going to be something very important here in this opposition because Mercury's trying to solve a problem, right? They're trying to solve a problem. We're trying to get to a goal. We're trying to figure out how best to utilize our minds for this process. And the moon opposite Mercury and quincunx to Saturn at the very same time is that we're going to have to, I would say, have some humor. That's quite simply, right? Have a sense of humor, right? Be willing to clown yourself. Be willing to perhaps roast other people or find some humor in other people being roasted. There's something very deconditioning about humor, and memes are a great way to do this, although not all of them are meant to decondition us through humor. Some of us are meant to condition us, but in any case, it's the laughter and the clowning in particular, which is a very trickster Heyoka type of energy, is really meant for this. And it will really pull on our very serious mindset about how to do this. And it also is going to be really seemingly not fitting at all with where Saturn is, because again, Saturn is just like, no, you can't get your information anywhere. If you want to be inspired for this new phase of experience here, it's gonna come from inspiration. But again, these two things aren't mutually exclusive. They just don't fit together. So the transmutation is the way with the quincunx. And so there's something here about the clowning and the caricaturing and the laughter and the humor that we can bring into our own feelings that I think will allow us to soften just a little bit so that we can be inspired by a different kind of muse, perhaps. It doesn't have to be, this is so serious, right? And this is going to really help soften those edges and give us something to laugh at on Monday when everything has just been feeling so incredibly intense and serious. Now, the moon comes into a sextile with Uranus right after this. And again, this is a great opportunity for us to just be open to the revelation of our own latent worth, and seeing the deeper meaning of it. And again, while Uranus is making our material realm and currency and value and our own bodies just completely unsettled in so many ways, this particular position of the moon. Remember, the moon is at home in Cancer, and we are getting very close to Sirius. I mean, I would say that this is even in conjunction with the fixed star Sirius. So latent worth that is at the core of who we are. And you don't see it until you see it in its deeper meaning. But when we do that, then again, the infinite amount of windows of reality that we're shopping in because of Uranus making it completely glitching it out constantly. Once we'll be able to see the deeper meaning of ourselves, and the revelation of our own latent worth, and be able to invest that and reconcile that with what Uranus is doing. Because if you are so reliant on just the material aspect of reality, then Uranus is just making life a living hell for you. And many people have chosen to exit because of that. They're at a soul level. But this is an opportunity to tap into the changeless, infinite, deep meaning. And that's the thing about Cancer in the fourth house, is meaning of the inner world. And so when we see things in their deeper experience, then it becomes so meaningful within us. I think this is going to be really important to consider because of when Saturn comes into a square with Uranus. Mercury comes into a trine. This is Monday. So Mercury comes into a trine with Uranus. And again, it's very serious, of course. There we go. Comes into a trine. And again, this is an opportunity for us to really start to explore these realms of nature that we don't actively see right on the surface, that we have to start exploring and studying and being willing to research. And when we do that again, we are with our mind, right? It's kind of like what takes some of the edge off of the seriousness. You have the moon in, like a do from Sirius, and we start to see things in a much deeper meaning that allows us to, pretty much ride this time wave successfully. And then Mercury, who's, our mind is really focused on the group integration and the concrete goal and ambition of what we're trying to do here, is then going to realize, I can actually start studying and researching the mysteries of nature, the mysteries of life, like actually understanding how it all works. And then again, then it's not even just from a place of our subconscious or a deep inner meaning, and that's important. But then we have our actual mind able to fully engage with Uranus and allow for that constant disruption to actually be a revelation and to be a way to think outside of the box and a way to innovate. Uranus really does allow us to innovate, very much so. But it'll, instead of taking things so seriously, maybe taking that serious tone and actually starting to do some deeper work within ourselves and allowing our mind to go in there is really going to be of assistance too. Because then the moon then comes into a trine with Neptune. Oh, we already went past it. By the end of the 20th, right? This is a water trine with Mercury, or the moon in Cancer, and a trine to Neptune. And so we have this opportunity now to really prove our own virtuosity by some sort of performance. I mean, it can be any type of performance that's really rooted in deep meaning and feeling, and then we'll get something from that. And the trine to Neptune, again, there's just this deep, there's going to be so much like inspiration and meaning that comes along with this moon in Cancer that is going to get a lot of traction with Neptune in Pisces. So again, it depends on what where your virtue is sitting and what kind of performance that you are giving yourself over to, because that's going to, again, have a impact on, Neptune in Pisces. If Neptune in Pisces is, you are fully supporting and trusting and surrendering completely to God or to source or to the vibration that makes up all existence, the universe. However, if you trust it, like that you don't even know that there's a difference between you and everything else, and that's how much you have surrendered to it. This is going to be amazing. Right? Because you will then find a feeling within you that is reinforcing this so much for yourself and others. But if you are given into the propaganda completely with Neptune and Pisces, then you're just going to become, a voice box for that propaganda. And you'll see that too, right? And rewards, right? People are going to be rewarded emotionally in some way, depending on how they are engaging with Neptune and Pisces. If you are totally submerged in the lie or the deceit or the deception, then what comes through intensely through each person that is performing on that behalf, you will get some sort of reward, whatever it is. But if you are also engaged and surrendered fully, not to the deception, but to the ascension or to source energy, however, God, divine intelligence, however, your performance and the meaning of your performance, whatever that is. This Sabian symbol is about like a famous opera singer, right? She or he receives rewards, emotional reward for the excellence that they display as a result of representing that particular culture or tradition or heritage. Because most operas are based on specific there's stories, of course, but there's stories that carry a lot of meaning for the culture or the nation or, some sort of a heritage or tradition. So either way you look at it, there will be a lot of traction emotionally for this as we are about to embark on the solstice. So I actually think I'm going to leave it there. And there is a lot coming up for the week. Is this site shows the actual live planets in the right degrees. If you have some sort of input on a better site, astro.com has probably the best ephemeris you're going to find on the internet, and those two seem to line up pretty well in terms of Planet Watcher. You can just go to the person who manages that website and check out their astrology and see what they base it on. But after using Planet Watcher, Astro.com, and a number of other places, it's fairly accurate as far as I can tell. But if you have suggestions about somewhere else to go, or obviously Solar Fire or Astro Gold is like the go-to as far as programs, but I don't really have the opportunity right now to drop that kind of money on that program as much as I would love to. But so far, this has all been working for me. So, Emily, so we get to bust each other's chops on Monday. I can't wait. Well, that's why I kind of want to be totally alone on Monday. That would be great, wouldn't it? It's possible. It just depends on how we want to really look at, and we'll either bust each other's chops and be rewarded, or we will stay as a voice of God and divine source and be rewarded. It just depends on who we're aligned with and what kind of rewards are worth it. That's the other thing that is important to keep in mind about these transits. So, I think that's plenty to work with for right now, my friends. I think we can leave it here, and we can, I'm going to do a report for the winter solstice in general. And so that will address the week leading up to Christmas, of course. And there's not going to be a transmission Monday. There's not going to be, I don't think I'm going to be able to do one on Tuesday morning either. So there is, but I'm going to be putting together something for the solstice, which is Tuesday morning, and then look at the week ahead, and then look at the entirety of the season as well, and put something together for that. So I think this is plenty of information to work with. Let me know how you're doing. Let me know what's going on for you. And like I said, you can access your own signs forecast for at least this full moon there's a playlist on YouTube or in BitChute. You just got to scroll down. I haven't put any of these things on Odysee yet because I don't have much traction there. So once I seem to have a little bit more traction, I will put the energy into uploading the forecasts there. Unless you think that that will get more attention on Odysee, I'm not entirely sure if that will or not. So thank you so much, my friends, for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are interested in a personal reading to get more information or to support this work through Subscribestar, you can get everything you need in the description box below, or you can just hang out to the end of this video and there'll be some more information for you. So I love you guys. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourselves. Have a illuminating full moon. Be easy on yourselves, but don't be afraid to really do some hard inner work and to let go of what we all know is just unbearable at this point in terms of our mindset, and know that that's going to propel us into the future. And I'm looking forward to it as much as I'm also dreading it at the same time, which is part of the Gemini thing. So take care, guys. I love you. I'll see you sometime next week. And let me know how you're doing in the meantime. And yeah, we'll be back together live probably next Wednesday. Okay. But in the meantime, there will be more. I'll put out a report and stuff. So take care, everyone. I'll see you later. Bye.